Hello, people. This is Vinay, your host. Welcome to the Shiny Happy People podcast. I hope everybody's staying safe. Can you believe it? This is August 2021. We have been sticking with this pandemic stuff for what feels like a long time. I hope everyone's staying safe. I know a lot of countries are out of lockdown. People are heading out. I hope you're all vaccinated. Continue to take the precautions we need to. And let's work on getting everybody back. For those of us who've survived, let's stay safe and make sure our livelihoods and our lives and the impact that we make continue. Okay, yeah. So I'm in a bit of a reflective mood, but let's get on to happier things. I hope you're all staying healthy as well. So today we've got a guest and a really cool interview. We're going to talk a little bit about how you build a business, how you network, how you do lots of different things. It's an international guest, and I love the fact that we cross all time zones when we do these interviews. I'm not letting the cat out of the bag because I want you to stay tuned. So let's get to it. Okay, I can hear people getting impatient. Okay, let's get to the interview right after this break. So folks, our guest for today's podcast is someone who's a CEO confidant. It's 𝐮𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬. He's an influencer, a LinkedIn strategist, a TV host, a public speaker, a CEO consultant, a philanthropist, a board member, and I have no idea how he's managed to make time for this podcast. So welcome, 𝐮𝐬𝐬𝐬.
Well, thank you. I think that whenever someone has a will to do something, I think it's then the energy starts flowing in that direction. So the most important thing, thank you very much, Vinay, for having me here today.
Great.
To everybody listening to us.
Thanks, 𝐮𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬. So to let our listeners know a little bit more about him, he's in the last 21 years, he's helped more than 1,500 CEOs in 33 different countries to accelerate the growth of their businesses. So I'm sure he's got some awesome stories to share. He sits on the board of the Evolutionary Business Council. It's an organization with more than 350 global transformation leaders with a combined reach of well over 600 million people. 𝐮𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬, you're based out of Texas, correct?
Correct. North of Dallas.
Oh, great. Okay. Excellent. And so this is a podcast interview that's cutting across thousands of miles all the way from Bangalore, India to Texas.
I love that.
Excellent. So welcome again. And I'll start off throwing my first question at you. How are you doing? How have you been coping in this, what has turned out to be an interesting 12 months?
Yeah, really well. I mean, obviously, as anybody else, we've been testing the waters with, we know what the market has been doing, how the market has been reacting, and we just adapted to it. Actually, I am very active here in the business community in Dallas. And I have last year I was asked to deliver to 2 different groups of entrepreneurs through a business accelerator here. And the theme was both of the times pivoting in times of crisis. So I think that, last year, everybody was trying to reinvent themselves one way or another. And we did the same thing. So we kept on providing the business development services, the exposure services that we were always doing. But also we have been making sure that we were providing the additional services that our market needed.
Right. And I'm glad to know that you're doing okay and business has not been too bad this last 12 months. So question, let's go back to a little bit of origins. So what got you here? What was your inspiration into going into becoming a CEO confidant? I watched this show when I saw your profile. There's the horse whisperer, the dog whisperer, and now the CEO confidant.
Thank you. Well, so let me tell you, it wasn't something immediate. I really didn't have that. I didn't, when I obviously I did my research to make sure that nobody was using this trademark. But the reason why I did it is because I started using this trademark is because, and this brand is because after leaving corporate America in 2016, I started like basically, I sat down and I started counting my blessings, and I started counting what I had done in my professional career. Everybody that has worked in corporate America, they have had probably an amazing experience. And I started counting even the countries I had been, conducting business in. And suddenly I realized, oh my God, I worked with more than 1,500 companies. And the way we were conducting business with all those companies was always talking to the C-levels, to the CEOs. So I said, oh my God. And actually I have to confess, I stopped at 1,500. I'm sure that it's many more than that. But, I was blessed with working in more than 33 countries and with more than 1,500 CEOs. And that's why I started to say, I said, I've really worked with more than 1,500 CEOs, and I have helped them and the businesses and accelerate the growth of their businesses. So I said to myself, why not using that branding? And I started using it, and I think that people right now, they already know who I am.
No, that's great. And there's a question that popped into my head, but before I go there, are there any specific industries or sectors that you like working with, or is it across the board?
That's a great question. I'm being asked this question from time to time, not very often. And the answer is no. The reason being is that although the companies I was working with were, the companies that hired me before I became my own boss were mainly high tech and oil and gas. Regardless of that, actually, I was serving literally any industry, any vertical market you can think of. And today, rather than picking a specific industry, I actually pick the CEO. So when the CEO is someone that really wants to change the world, really wants to, leave a legacy behind him or her, and if he really wants to change or she wants to change, if those two conditions actually are in place, that's a good starting point for our conversation. So that's it.
Yeah, no. And when you said oil and gas, I'm thinking you're near Dallas, Texas oil and gas industry. So it probably came very naturally there, right?
Yeah, it could. Yeah, actually, it's very interestingly enough. I was still working in Mexico at that time, and I was living in Mexico, but I was already in touch with many people that lived in Houston. So, as you know, sometimes you end up thinking that your life is kind of magic, right? You don't know why you do certain things, but everything, comes into fruition, and everything is like different pieces of the puzzle that eventually make business sense. When I was working with the oil and gas industry, actually I was in Mexico, and I was representing, Rolls-Royce for power generation. So it was a very, very, very interesting moment in my life.
Yeah. So, the question that popped into my head earlier was, I love the name CEO Confidant, because when I work with clients, and particularly senior leadership and some CEOs, there's that expression, right? It's very lonely at the top. And you can't really often talk to people for them within the company. With peer groups, you've got to really have, from my experience of what I hear, a foundation of trust and to be able to talk to somebody in the same field. So I love the CEO Confidant. So you are the person who makes it less lonely at the top, I guess, right?
Yes. Well, let's say that God has blessed me with the ability to listen. And I think that's extremely important. Also, God has blessed me with the ability to ask questions, and maybe to ask questions that a lot of people don't ask. And I think that those two characteristics have made me a little bit of a different kind of beast, So, yeah, at the top is very lonely. At the same time, as you know, with every single CEO also serves a board, right? And when they go to talk to the board, and they have to present the results, and they have to get their feedback, they feel like going to the principal's office at some point. It's true. I mean, it's the feelings at the top are different, and also then they go to their leadership team and the rest of the senior leadership members of their company, and then they have to make sure that they really understand what the goals of the company are, and there they go. The rest of the business operators in the company have to act upon what the CEO and the mandate of the board was originally. So yeah, it's lonely at the top, but also I think that one of the main roles of the CEO is to close all those gaps that exist that I just described, like briefly.
No. I like what you said. It's like going to the principal's office. I think you're being very, very diplomatic and politically correct. Some of the CEOs say when they go to the board, they use much stronger language to sometimes how it feels.
It could be, absolutely. It could be. It's a stronger language, and because I think that every company is different, right? Every company has a different, the shareholders are different, and the way or how the company exists, why it was created originally, who are the different shareholders, how do they, got together to create that new venture. It really depends upon that. There's not a general rule, but yeah, it can be tough. It can be tough. And in publicly traded companies where there's a lot of different interests, those conversations can be really tough. But, that's why I think that it's extremely important that, obviously CEOs have someone to confide and someone that can have a very, an honest conversation without being fearful of the consequences.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're listening to the Shiny Happy People podcast. Subscribe to us on your favorite platforms. This podcast is sponsored by C2COD, your organizational development consulting partner, bringing people and strategy together. Follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook using the handle @C2COD and get updates on our upcoming episodes.
So let's talk about two aspects, right? Pre-pandemic and what happened. You talked about the pivot, but would you say that what are the most common themes that emerged as CEOs' challenges before the pandemic hit? What were the biggest things that kept them awake at night, for example?
Exactly. That's a great question. And actually, as you probably have realized, I'm very active on LinkedIn. I post every single day, and I literally have thousands of interactions because I have a large team, and I have thousands of interactions with thousands of members on LinkedIn every single week. Okay, so and something that the point I'm trying to make is that I literally speak with the C-levels every single week and every single day. And I always like to speak with CEOs, and I always like to actually launch polls and surveys, these kind of things. And I always ask them, what's the number one challenge you're facing right now? So typically the answers, interestingly enough, Vinay, I don't think the answer to that question has changed a lot. I think that the team keeps on being the number one concern, the team, the talent. How will I be able to keep the talent in my company? Will I be able to recruit the additional talent that I need for my company? How will I do that? I think that those are questions that are still there. And this is related to the gap I was mentioning before, right? There's always this gap between, the top level, senior leadership of a company and the rest of the business operators. And obviously, the larger the corporation, these gaps tend to be larger and larger and larger. So obviously, the mandate that the CEO has from the board or the plan that he has or she has himself or herself for the company, I think that it has to be executed, right? So that's why consistently across the board, every time I talk to them, it's their team. It's how am I going to make sure that my team is engaged, that my team is educated, and that I can keep my team accountable for the commitments that we all make as a company. And probably one of the main differences, let's say after, or given the current state of affairs right now, it's March 2021, almost April. So I would say that obviously last year was a year in which depending on the industries, revenues were down, so profitability became top of mind, and everybody was asking, okay, so how can I make that all my employees become fully aware of the financial implications of their business decisions? I think that's extremely important. Yeah. We tend to think, and honestly, profitability, number one, I think everybody has conceptualized like profits are evil, and it's bad to have profits and this kind of things. It's kind of, when some entrepreneurs talk about, money is bad and blah, blah, blah. And I think that talking about or financials inside the corporation is like this elephant in the room that nobody really wants to talk about, because people probably don't feel comfortable talking about that. Business operators, even the leadership team doesn't feel comfortable outside probably the financial function, right? So, and I think that if CEOs were able to tackle that, to talk openly about that elephant in the room, which is the financials of the company, how to make every single employee of the company to see the company from a set of, financials eyes. You know what I mean? I think that everybody would be more engaged. Everybody would know what are the financial implications of their business decisions. And I think that the accountability that the CEO needs and the leadership needs will be much easier to achieve.
Yeah, no, but you're right. You're absolutely, and it's really heartening to see that the number one issue is talent and people and not numbers, because the myth that exists is CEOs only care about bottom line, profit and loss, or revenue, but actually it's the talent, right? And that's the biggest thing that kept people awake.
I have a very good friend who phrases it very well. His name is 𝐻𝐬𝐬𝐬, and this is a masterful expression. It's revenues are vanity, profits are sanity, and cash flow is reality. That's the expression. I think it's a brilliant expression. Brilliant expression.
Awesome.
Cash flow is reality. Cash flow is really, really, really what is telling you what's going on. And obviously, it would be an understatement to say that CEOs were concerned about cash flow last year. Obviously, everybody was concerned about cash flow last year. But, going one step back, profits were the sanity, profits. So how do we make? And I think that the smartest organizations last year, they started to give the right education to the employees, so they became fully aware of the financial implications of their business decisions, which is going to make a very, very, and is already making a very, very strong comeback for those companies.
Yeah, absolutely correct. And the other thing is, you kind of hinted at CEOs who become comfortable about talking about it, right? And one of the biggest skills for most of the CEOs, I don't know if you agree with me, is about being vulnerable, being honest with their employees, really saying what the challenge is happening in the business, rather than being this politically correct and diplomatic CEO. Have you seen that shift happen, at least because of the pandemic?
I wouldn't say because of the pandemic. I think that tough decisions that they have had to make for the last 12 months have made them more vulnerable, and not everybody has reacted the same way. There have been CEOs that have become more vulnerable and more authentic, and they have said, hey, this is the reality. This is the reality. This is the cash flow. This is the sanity. This is the profits, and this is what we have to do. And they have made big sacrifices, So is vulnerability and authenticity, something important in leadership? Absolutely. And I talk about leadership all the time. It's extremely important. And I think that humanizing CEOs is something really important for them to be able to develop that, close relationship with their teams, which are going to make them follow, the CEO in their roles. I think that's extremely important, follow him or follow her. That I've seen that. I've definitely seen that. So in times of crisis, I think that you have to be extremely honest with everybody and say, hey, this is the reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And the point I was making is the whole thing about vulnerable, honest, well, at least vulnerability, let's use that. It's an overused term now, but it was more the exception than the norm. I think now it's more the norm for senior leaders to be vulnerable.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to forget that leadership is not taught. You don't go to Harvard or to Yale or to, Berkeley or to Stanford and you get, even if you get and you go and you follow a leadership course, postgraduate course, whatever it is, leadership is something that you learn by doing. And I think that the larger the company is, the more agendas that you have to satisfy, okay? And then it becomes difficult, it becomes complex. And I think that the most amazing leaders in the world have been able to master that leadership, and they have been able to become really true to themselves, true to their teams, and true to their shareholders. Because let's not forget, a company exists to fulfill, and to keep on increasing the shareholder value and to, give back that shareholder value to the shareholders. They put it in the first place. And let's not forget that. Okay. So that's the main goal of a company.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You might find this an odd question, given the work that you do. One of the things that's always surprised me about when you get to the top as CEOs, right? And I've held the CEO role for a short period myself, is we say it's lonely at the top, But when I was middle management, wherever, and you've known it, we had support groups. We had other middle managers we could talk to, maybe in our function in the business. One thing that really surprised me is how CEOs very often don't talk very openly with other CEOs of other companies, right? They're always on guard. It's like, there isn't a support group. What's great is that there's more work for people like you and me who serve as coaches and confidants to them. But why do you think that's happening? Why, or am I wrong in saying that CEOs are a little bit on guard with each other sometimes?
That's true. But I mean, remember, let me ask you a question back to you. I mean, are we being taught more collaboration or more competition in our lives? Just consider as a human being. Are we being taught? I mean, consider, I mean, I don't know if you have kids or you have nieces or nephews, right? Are we teaching? Are we preaching to the choir? Are we talking and are we teaching? Is the educational system, teaching more collaboration or more competition? So I think that we, in general, as a society, we have done a poor job trying to, raise the bar, of collaboration as opposed to competition. And that generates, fear, and that generates mistrust and many other things, right? But at the same time, I mean, there's many, I'm not going to say any name, but there's many groups out there, peer groups of CEOs in many different countries, and 2 or 3 come to my mind right now that are being very, very successful because they have been able to create that space of trust. So I think that it's a matter of can that space be created? Is that space of trust in which we bring together those CEOs to confide ideas, to test ideas, to challenge ideas. Rather than that, the question is, how can we create those spaces? And I think that's being created. I think that's a reality. I think this is a reality, and that is happening literally every single day. The thing is that common? No, because if that was common, let me give you an example. I mean, even myself, I am at several C-level executives groups here at LinkedIn, and the conversations there, I mean, are very scarce. I mean, there are thousands and thousands of members, and the engagement on the post on those groups is very low, which means that they're not really engaged on these groups. I'm not saying people, I mean, obviously it depends on the value of those posts and content in general, but everybody's very busy. So everybody, and the more to the top of an organization you go, the more scarce the time is as a resource. So again, I think that taking into consideration every single aspect of the human aspect of a CEO,
right,
answers a little bit part of the question that you asked.
Yeah. So I hear what you're saying. Sometimes you need to facilitate that space and the time that brings them together. It won't happen organically because of that predisposition to be more competitive and guarded and all of that. Right?
Exactly. And you were a CEO, so the question is, I mean, if I ask you right now, give me 5, 10 characteristics, 10 criteria that a peer group would be or should have in order for you to attend that group, I'm sure that you will be able to come up with those 5 or 10 criteria because you've been there. So again, it's a matter of how can we create those spaces so that there's enough trust, there's enough, safety in that group, so that this group can be really generated and people feel comfortable being there and making it thrive. At the end of the day, you are there to generate value for you and for your business, and everybody is there for the same reason.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really interesting point. So in the last 3 or 4 months, and things are starting to, as you said, slightly get better. Hopefully, we are going to be out of this pandemic. I won't use the term that's overused about something called something normal, right? It's overused. But as we get there, what are you seeing as some of the 1 or 2 or 3 new skills that CEOs have picked up that's going to really help them moving forward?
Well, number one, I think that they will have to, more than ever, given let's say the isolation, the physical distancing that has created, and obviously that has created issues, but also opportunities within the companies. I think that new ways of leadership will have to be created and are being created. I think that the workforce will have to be more educated, more trained on many different aspects. And I was talking to the other day, with a C-level from a $600 million company, and he was telling me, hey, I have a great sales force, but guess what? Many have left because they don't feel comfortable selling online. They used to close multi-million-dollar deals face-to-face, shaking hands, but now using Zoom or another or any other platform, it's difficult. It's difficult to do that. So that's number two. I think that CEOs have to develop a new skill, which is having those conversations over online, video tools, and they will have to be more precise, more persuasive, more convincing than ever before, without being able to shake hands. So that I think that's those two are things that will happen there. But the bottom line is, what leadership style do they want to create? Knowing that, if they are alone, you said at the top is very lonely, but some people consider it in a different way. Some people consider that CEOs are on an ivory tower, right? So it might be lonely, but some other people say, they are up there and they don't really understand what happens at the bottom, right? So more than before, they will have to understand what's happening at the bottom. And in order to increase accountability of what their employees do, they will have somehow to improve, engagement. And I think that education is the answer to all of this.
So absolutely right. And coming back to your first point, I heard from a CEO the other day that one of the things he's realized was he used to be on the road all the time, always traveling to meet his sales teams, global and local regional offices, meeting customers. And he's found that he could actually be a lot more productive from his desk and meet more employees than he ever did, and have more time available to look after himself. So maybe the days of CEOs being on the road all the time will also change to being more sensible of when you need to go on the road, right? I don't know.
I agree. And to your point, actually, I was last week talking to actually a C-level of a $1.3 billion high-tech company. And actually, the high-tech industry, many parts of the high-tech industry actually thrived pretty nicely that last year. And he was telling me our profitability last year skyrocketed. We saved thousands, not thousands, actually they saved millions of dollars in traveling expenses, and they still close those deals. So this is telling you something. So we probably found other kinds of, other hidden pockets of profitability in the companies that we didn't know existed. I think that eventually we will go back to traveling, maybe probably not as much as before, but I think that we are in the process of redefining what the relationship with our customers are.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be much more the impactful travel, right? I think I can't wait till the face-to-face connections come back as well, but I don't think every trip is needed as well.
Yeah.
So have you had to also change your way of working, obviously, in terms of the way you have those conversations with the CEOs? Was a lot of your work virtual to begin with, or were you also meeting them in coffee shops?
That's a great question. I've always tried to develop my local market here. North of Texas is thriving business-wise. We've had so many large companies relocating their headquarters here in prior years. So I'm blessed to being in a great place, and I have always, cultivated a lot my local business relationships, a lot, like extensively. So interestingly enough, to your question, Vinay, last year I kept on having those face-to-face meetings. So I was still meeting face-to-face with a lot of C-level executives. So did I change? Yeah, I had a lot of online meetings, and some people were reluctant to meeting face-to-face, but many others were not reluctant. And we met, and we shake hands and we gave hugs and everything. Maybe because I'm from Spain, so I'm Latino, so I like shakes and hands and hugs. Excuse me. So it depends. Everybody has a different level of comfortability, and obviously with respect and communication, setting the right expectations. I think that we all respect each other. I think that honestly, we all want the best for everybody, and I have found that things changed, yes, but not as dramatically as we might have thought in the beginning.
But it also gave you an opportunity to get new clients from outside of your region as well, right? Completely virtual to begin with. Did that also happen?
Yes, because I have never in my life been more online than in 2020.
Like everybody.
Yeah. So I was already there because just to give you an example, LinkedIn is a platform where I have always spent a lot of hours, but right now, not only myself and my team, we spend literally hundreds of hours on LinkedIn for ourselves or for our clients, businesses every single week, literally. So that means that obviously you grab the attention from many people from many different places, from other continents. Yes. So to your question, absolutely. Yes, that has been the case.
What's been inspiring you? I mean, as you look out there, what inspires you? What keeps you motivated to do what you're doing?
Thank you. So I think that first, that you probably have realized, along with your production team, I am a very, upbeat kind of guy, very passionate. My mission in this world is to connect the unconnected. Is to really be the conduit of everybody else's greatness. That's who 𝐮𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬 is. That's who the CEO Confidant is. Okay, so I live a life in which every single connection I make, and today is a great example. I'm blessed with you having me on your show and allowing me to humbly inspire your audience, right? So every single time that I make a connection, every single time I'm able to develop a new relationship, a new connection, and that's even more important now. I mean, as you can imagine, last year there were millions of connections, just cat. And I don't know anybody who hasn't even burned some bridges last year for some reason, right?
Yeah.
And we have all burned some bridges last year. So, and people are trying to rebuild it. And last year, actually, my most common theme online was, building bridges, because that's really who I am. So that's what motivates me. And that's why also I created, when I left corporate America, you probably have read this on my resume or on my biography, which is I created, along with two friends of mine, Wisdom for Kids, this foundation that we help underprivileged kids in Latin America become entrepreneurs using the local resources. And actually, prior to creating that, I actually became, and I'm blessed that you are in India, because I am still the ambassador for one of the largest nonprofit organizations in the south of India, and I have helped actually. Yeah, I am the ambassador for the southwest of the U.S., and I have actually raised money and helped, thousands and thousands of people in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana areas. Right. And I have attended meetings here of the North American Telugu Association. So it's funny that most of the people don't know this, but I'm very, very sensitive. The reason why I've been so proactively helping so many, men and women and inequality in India is because one of the largest organizations actually has a Spanish origin. It was a Jesuit monk that in 1950 actually went to India, and he started a nonprofit called Rural Development Trust. Oh, wow. And he actually, I think it was in the 60s or mid 60s. I think it was Indira Gandhi that was the president at that time, and he had to leave India for a while in order to have the governor of another state or province to accept him back. And we have helped all, together more than 3 almost 4 million people already. So I've always been very sensitive about connecting the unconnected, Vinay.
Wow. So we should connect about this offline. Sounds very, very interesting.
Absolutely.
Okay. So how do you stay, I talked about what inspires you, but so this podcast is called The Shiny Happy People. It's all about trying to understand how do you stay positive? What makes you happy? Is it exercise, music?
I can tell you. I exercise on and off, so I wouldn't say that's the source of my happiness, because I am a very happy camper. Let's put it this way. I'm always positive and everything. Where does this come from? I think that probably because my life has been a blessing. That's one of the reasons. And I really like to count my blessings. Number two, every single day I actually participate on something. I have a group of people that we have been meditating in something called the intention experiment. We do intention experiments every single day. So we meet every single morning at 8 a.m. Central Time, the US, and we intend for something or for someone every single day. We've been doing that for 3 years and a half. Wow. I believe in the power of affirmations. You know, I learned a lot from Tony Robbins in one of his events I attended. And I believe I use this as affirmations as a way to change my state. So when I feel down a little bit, I am a human being as you are, and you know, as your production team is, I'm just another human being. But I know how to change my state. And let me actually share a secret I have not shared with any audience, which is I love dancing. So music and dancing really helps me be that happy camper that you just said in the beginning. So it's very common that you see me, for instance, driving. I drive a small convertible, and it's very easy to see me driving a convertible, singing to myself and dancing inside the car. That's me. And people think that I'm crazy, but you know, this is just who I am. And I'm a happy person. You know, I am a happy person.
Yeah, well, we share that love of music as a way to uplift our moods for sure. And my final question, we have a segment on our podcast called RWL, which is recommendations on maybe things to read, watch, or listen. So do you have any books that you're reading you want to recommend, or something you watch that inspired you?
Yeah, I will definitely recommend you one book that changed my life. Another one, which I think it's a must. And actually I mentioned the author before. One book that changed my life forever and made me move from Europe to the Americas. The book is called The Celestine Prophecy. The Celestine Prophecy. The author is James Redfield. And it's a beautiful fiction book about, 9 revelations, 9 scrolls that appeared in the Amazonian forest of Peru. I really recommend you the book. I'm not going to tell you anything else. It changed my life, and it's literally changed millions of lives. It's one of these amazing books that has been a bestseller year over year over year. That's the first book. And the second book I'm going to recommend, actually, I'm going to show it to you. We're on video here. It's called, the book is called The Baker's Dozen Rules of Highly Successful Business Operators. People cannot see the front cover.
Okay, yeah.
The Baker's Dozen Rules of Highly Successful Business Operators by Neville Joffe. It's a 90-minute read to bridge the gap between operational behaviors and stakeholder expectations. It's a great book. Anybody that has a business, should read this book. It's a must-read book. It's been actually written by Neville Joffe, as I said before. The foreword of the book is being written by, I don't know if you know this, 𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬, the shoes company from Australia.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Exactly. It's very common here. It's very well known here in the US as well. So this gentleman wrote the foreword of the book. So that's the kind, and then this gentleman worked, Neville Joffe worked with more than 20,000 C-level executives and business operators. He's trained them, literally, personally trained them. So it's that this book is one of the best business books I've ever read in my life.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Angel. So thank you within your busy schedule to make time for this podcast and share some thoughts, and love your energy. And I can see that you love what you do. So that really comes through.
Thank you. I do love what I do. Thank you very much. Maybe if I may just very briefly, just to say where people can find me. My name is Angel, ANGEL. My last name is Ribo, RIB as in boy, O, and my email address is extremely simple, angel@angelribo.com. It would be a pleasure for me to talk with you. Send me an email. I respond to all the emails, either myself or my team. Again, Vinay, thank you very much for having me here at your show today, and thank you to everybody listening to us.
Thank you, and I'll make sure we put all your recommendations, website, LinkedIn, in our show notes, track notes, so people can find you. Brilliant. Thanks, Angel.
Thank you.
Okay, I hope you found that conversation with Angel as fun as I did. I love the fact that he's a CEO confidant. Imagine the book he could write, but I know he won't write it because, as great coaches do, We keep all conversations with our clients very, very confidential. And that's why he's the CEO of Confidant, right? Love to get your feedback. Drop in a quick note. Send some information to us on podcast@c2cod.com. And I'll see you all in 2 weeks. Stay safe, folks. Over and out.